Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to cut through the noise, get you the insights you need. Today, we're tackling something huge: thyroid health. It's striking thyroid cancer rates globally. They've been climbing for decades. And that raises a big question, doesn't it? Is it just that we're getting better at finding it? Or is there maybe something else, something in the environment playing a role here? So, our mission today is to really unpack this major new systematic review. It's by Vohra and colleagues, just out in 2024. They did a deep dive into the link between air pollution, the stuff we breathe outdoors, and thyroid cancer and nodules. We're going to look at, what exactly they were trying to figure out, how they went about it, what they actually found, and crucially, what it all means for you. Okay, let's unpack this. The researchers, they had a really clear goal in mind,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. They saw this rising thyroid cancer incidence,
Yeah.
and yeah, better detection is definitely part of it. But this question mark hung over environmental factors, specifically outdoor air pollution. Was it a contributor? The picture was pretty murky.
Murky how? Like, what was the problem with the older studies?
Well, they were all over the place. Different countries, different ways of even measuring the pollution, sometimes tiny sample sizes. It made it really hard to see if there was a genuine pattern. You know, lots of uncertainty.
Gotcha. So this new review tried to cut through that noise. What were their ground rules? What kind of studies made the cut?
Okay, so they were super specific. They needed original research, human subjects, 18 or older. That's the population. Then the exposure. This was key. They only wanted studies with quantifiable measures of specific outdoor air pollutants.
Ah, not just living in a city versus living in the country.
Exactly. No broad categories like that, or using biomarkers as a sort of stand-in. They wanted hard numbers for things like ozone O3, particulate matter, both PM2.5 and PM10.
That's the really fine dust.
Yeah, the microscopic stuff.
Okay.
Also, sulfur dioxide, SO2, nitric oxides, hot rocks, carbon monoxide, CO, and those polyaromatic hydrocarbons, PAHs.
Okay. Specific pollutants and the outcome. What were they looking for health-wise?
The primary outcome had to be a diagnosis of either thyroid cancer or thyroid nodules. They specifically excluded studies just looking at death rates. They wanted incidence new cases.
Right. Focus on diagnosis.
And, critically, the study had to give a measure of the effect size, how strong the link seemed, backed up by proper statistical analysis. No guesswork allowed.
So a clear question, specific criteria. How do they actually find these studies? Sounds like a huge task.
Well, it was. What's fascinating here is just how rigorous they were. They searched 5 massive databases: PubMed, Embase, Cochrane, Web of Science, Scopus, the whole 9 yards. And they didn't just wing it. They registered their plan beforehand with Prospero, followed strict guidelines like Prisma and the Cochrane Handbook.
Those are like the gold standards for this kind of review, right? Ensures quality.
Exactly. It means they were transparent, systematic. Other scientists can check their work. It's all about doing it by the book.
Okay, serious stuff. So
No.
this huge search, did they find hundreds of relevant studies?
You'd think so, but no. They started with almost 1,300 potentials, 1,294 to be exact. But after their really careful screening process, 2 reviewers working independently, a third stepping in for disagreements, they ended up with only 11 studies. Just 11.
Wow, 11 out of nearly 1,300. That really shows how strict their criteria were.
It does. It tells you how few studies actually met that high bar of having quantifiable exposure data and solid statistical analysis on this specific question.
So these 11 studies, what was their scope? Were they all from one place?
No, actually, despite being few, they were pretty broad. Collectively, they covered over 6 million patients. And they were from diverse regions: Asia, South America, North America, the EU, even one worldwide study.
Okay, that's impressive scale. And the
Yeah.
study types.
A mix, a couple of retrospective cohorts looking back over time, 5 ecological studies which look at population-level data, city pollution versus city cancer rates, then 2 cross-sectionals, like a snapshot in time, and 2 case control, comparing people with thyroid issues to those without.
And how did those original studies measure pollution? Was that consistent?
Well, that's one of the complexities. The methods varied. Some used official air quality monitoring networks, others relied on satellite data, some used geographic estimates, so not perfectly uniform.
Okay. And extracting the data from these 11 studies.
Also very careful. Done by 3 independent reviewers to make sure nothing was missed or misinterpreted. Any disagreements got reviewed by senior authors. Thorough.
Right. Okay, here's the million-dollar question then. After all that meticulous searching and sifting, what did they actually find? Were there clear signals?
There were, yeah. For some pollutants, the signal was pretty consistent. Let's take ozone, O3. All 5 studies that looked at O3 found increased risks for thyroid cancer or nodules. The increase ranged from 1.03 to 1.5 times the risk.
So a noticeable increase. Any examples?
Yep. One study, Park et al., from 2021, found a 1.17-fold increased risk for thyroid cancer with higher O3 exposure, so about a 17% higher risk.
Okay, that's concrete. What about other pollutants? Nitric oxides, NIOX.
Similar story there. All 3 studies assessing NOx showed increased risks, ranging from 1.1 to 1.3-fold. That same Park study, for instance, reported a 1.33-fold increased risk, 33% higher, for thyroid cancer linked to NO2 exposure.
Wow. And PM2.5, that gets talked about a lot.
Yes, and it was consistent too. All studies looking at PM2.5 reported positive associations. We're talking 1.18 to 1.23 times the odds of a thyroid cancer diagnosis.
So roughly 20% higher odds again.
Around that, yeah. But what was really striking with PM2.5 was a dose-response relationship. The study suggested that the magnitude of the association went up with longer exposure duration or higher concentrations.
Oh, interesting. So the more you're exposed or the longer, the bigger the potential risk.
That's what the data suggested. One study, Karzai et al., found an 18% increase in odds after 24 months of PM2.5 exposure, but that jumped to 23% after 36 months. And another one, Craver et al., found a significant nonlinear increase, meaning the risk might climb even faster at higher pollution levels. It's not just a straight line.
Okay, so O3, NEOX, PM2.5. Pretty consistent signals there. But you mentioned earlier some results were inconsistent.
That's right. For PM10, the slightly larger particles, and for SO2 and CO, the results were, well, all over the map. For instance, that Park study we mentioned. It actually found an inverse association for PM10 and CO, meaning lower risk with higher exposure.
Wait, lower risk? That seems counterintuitive.
It does. But other studies found positive links or no link at all for those same pollutants. So really inconsistent.
So why the discrepancies for those particular pollutants? Did the review offer any reasons?
Yeah, they pointed to a few things, connecting it back to the bigger picture. First, as we touched on, the different methods used to assess pollution levels in the original studies. That lack of standardization is a big factor. Second, huge differences in what other factors the studies adjusted for. Some controlled for age, sex, lifestyle factors, others hardly anything. Makes comparison really tough.
Right, comparing apples and oranges almost.
Kind of. Then there are real regional differences in what makes up the pollution mix. Traffic pollution isn't the same as industrial pollution. And finally, maybe different populations just have different susceptibilities, perhaps due to genetics or other local environmental factors or lifestyle. It's complex.
It really is. So many moving parts. Okay, you mentioned the original studies use statistical analysis. What kinds of tests were they using? Did that affect the review?
Good question. The systematic review itself mainly summarized descriptively, but it reported on the stats used by those 11 studies. And they used a whole toolkit, things like adjusted odds ratios, ARRs, relative risk RR, correlation coefficients, regression analysis like OLS and linear models, even more complex generalized additive models.
So a real variety of statistical approaches in the underlying papers.
Exactly. And that variety, while maybe appropriate for each individual study, made it really hard for the reviewers to pool the results. They couldn't easily combine an odds ratio from one study with a correlation coefficient from another and get a single, meaningful overall number. That's a key reason why they couldn't do a meta-analysis. The stats weren't directly comparable enough.
Ah, okay. So they had to describe the findings rather than calculate one big average effect. Got it. Now, with all these variations and inconsistencies, how strong did the reviewers think the evidence actually was? Did they assess the quality of those 11 studies?
They did, yes. It's a standard, crucial step assessing the risk of biases. They use specific tools from the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, the NHLBI tools. Again, 2 independent reviewers did this assessment to ensure objectivity.
And what was the verdict on quality? Were they mostly solid studies, or?
It was a bit of a mixed bag, leaning towards fair to good, but with definite weaknesses. Out of the 9 observational cohort and cross-sectional studies, 4 were rated good, 3 fair, and 2 were actually rated poor.
Okay, so a couple were considered weak.
Right. The 2 case control studies, though, were both rated good. So, overall, while 6 studies had a low risk of bias, 5, nearly half, had a moderate to high risk.
So that tempers the findings somewhat, doesn't it? Suggests we need to be a bit cautious.
Exactly. It means the overall body of evidence has some limitations in terms of quality, which definitely needs to be kept in mind when we think about the conclusions. Which brings us to the big question. What did the authors ultimately conclude, and what caveats did they emphasize? Their main takeaway was that this emerging body of literature does suggest a potential association between air pollution and thyroid cancer and nodules. Keyword, suggests.
Suggests, not proves, because of the limitations.
Precisely. They were very clear about the limitations of their own review,
Yeah.
stemming from the limitations of the studies they included.
What were the main ones they highlighted?
Well, first, that heterogeneity we keep mentioning, the diverse methods, populations, it just muddies the water, makes it hard to see a perfectly clear picture. Second, the variability in how pollution exposure was actually measured. National monitors versus satellites versus estimates, it's not consistent.
Right.
Third, very few studies looked at specific types of thyroid cancer. That limits how detailed the analysis can be. Fourth, the different study designs, some looking at pollution and outcomes at the same time, others looking back can affect results.
And the statistical issues.
Yes, the huge one, statistical comparability. Because the original studies reported findings in so many different ways, odds ratios, correlations, etc., they just couldn't combine them statistically into a meta-analysis for a single powerful result. That was a major limitation.
Okay, so no single number to hang our hats on.
No. And another big potential confounder, detection bias. Areas with higher pollution might also have better access to medical imaging, like ultrasounds.
Ah, so people in polluted areas might just get scanned more often, leading to more thyroid nodules or cancers being found, even if the pollution isn't the direct cause.
Exactly. It's a possibility they couldn't rule out based on the available studies. The review is ultimately dependent on the quality and the data reported in those original 11 papers.
Okay, so summing up, this big review by Vohra et al. Points towards an emerging link, a connection between air pollution and thyroid health. But, and it's a big but, the evidence we have right now has significant limitations. Lots of variation in how studies were done.
Yeah, that's a fair summary. A signal, but one that needs a lot more investigation with better, more standardized methods.
So, thinking about this, what does it mean for you listening right now if you're concerned about health, about the environment? Well, this research adds another layer, doesn't it? It suggests that the quality of the air we breathe, specifically components like ozone, NOx, and PM2.5, might be part of the complex picture of thyroid health. It's not definitive proof of cause and effect yet, but it's a signal worth being aware of. Perhaps knowing this reinforces the importance of understanding your local air quality. And maybe it nudges conversations beyond just personal health choices towards thinking about community-level air quality initiatives and public health policy. What could we be doing collectively?
Absolutely. And the review really highlights where research needs to go next. The authors strongly call for standardizing how we measure pollutants in these studies. We need consistency. We also need studies to look at specific types of thyroid cancer, not just lump them all together. And really digging into dose response, are there thresholds, how much exposure matters, plus investigating genetic factors or epigenetic changes, things that might make some people more susceptible than others to the effects of air pollution on their thyroid. There's still so much to uncover here.
A clearer path forward, thanks to this deep dive.
Uh,
Fascinating stuff.